Hello, my name is Caitlin. I know it's been a little while since I posted on this channel. I apologize for that, but it's a new year and new videos coming soon. This, though, is my favorite video to post every year. I've been posting it since 2017. This is the fourth time I've put this together, and this year is a special one because it is the first year that I have hit 100 books, which is incredible considering the year. I'm going to go over all of the stats and data that I've acquired from reading 100 books over the past year, and you'll see that it was definitely a very inconsistent year. Somehow I was able to hold on and keep the goal moving forward, and so I did it. I hit the 100 goal. At the end of the video, I'll talk about my new goal. I apologize if this video ends up being a little bit long. I don't intend for it to be long, but when I have 100 books, it may take a little bit to go through them. I'm not going to go into any details about any of the books. I'm just going to tell you what I read. There may be other videos that I post on my books channel. Shout out if you're not following my books channel, it's Print Scream. I'll put a link down in the description box below, but that is the channel where I post or plan to post more book content, since this is primarily a tech channel. So if you are interested in books, most of the books are going to be STEM books or sci-fi. Those are the two areas that I gravitate to most. A lot of tech books, science books, and of course sci-fi, lots of robots and space and stuff. So if you're interested in any of that, go follow me over on that book channel. I'm actually going to post a new video right away so that you have something to watch over there. It is going to be my favorite books of 2020. So if you want to know which of these 100 books were my favorite, I have 5 from 2020 and 5 that are like older. So if you're interested in seeing what those 10 books are, then go check out that channel and subscribe. But subscribe over here too, because I do have more videos coming. I have a new build coming up, which is kind of exciting. And just, yeah, I'm gonna be posting pretty much weekly, if not more often. I also want to apologize if there is a echo in this room. This is a new setup that I'm putting together, so it makes it easier for me to record videos, but the room is fairly empty, so there's a little bit of an echo. I'm trying not to talk loudly so that the echo is less pronounced. It's a work in progress. I don't know what direction I'm gonna have to go to make it sound better, but bear with me. A few things to mention about the 100 book goal. One was that I intentionally read more graphic novels this year. This was an actual effort that I wanted to do because I love graphic novels. There's something about the imagination and what you can do with both the art and the very interesting stories that often come along with it that you don't find in typical novels or even sci-fi. And so I did want to go out there and read some that are well known and some of my favorites. So of course that is going to pad the goal a little bit. I never chose any individual series to count towards the goal. They're all volumes, multi-series books, so they are lengthy, but I do want to mention that I do have quite a number of graphic novels in this counting. You will also notice a few genres that I definitely stuck to. There were a few times that I gravitated away from that, mostly because in the midst of 2020, the chaos that ensued for this year, I'm sure you all are well aware of it, and I hope you all are doing well and hanging in there. I did choose to read some books that were maybe a little bit less heavy, or just to kind of like find more enjoyment. Although I say that, and honestly, this year has been the year that I read the most disturbing books. And maybe I'll do another video on all the weird books that I read this year, because there were a few, that's for sure, but they won't be in this. I'll mention them in this video, but we're not going to go into detail about them. I also did read a lot of robot books and AI books. As a tech person, I do love anything robots and AI. Those are two areas that I do naturally gravitate. So I did seek out more fiction that had to do with robots and also nonfiction. So you will see quite a few AI AI related books in the list as well. And of course, as many of you already know, I do read a lot of tech books, a lot of security books, and a lot of science books. I kind of lump these into the STEM category, of course, STEM being science, technology, engineering, and math. And I kind of lump sci-fi into that. I would say that these are the two areas that I do gravitate to the most, STEM and sci-fi. So if you see more of those type books as opposed to maybe fantasy or young adult or just even general fiction, that's why. It's just because I make a point to try to find books that I'm most interested in, and those are the categories I'm most interested in, so if that makes sense. Yeah, I think we should probably jump into the stats now. So one of my favorite things to look at every year is the timing of when I read books. I don't know why I find this so fascinating, and every year it seems to align with, I read more in the winter, which kind of makes sense. In the summer, I do like to spend more time outdoors. I love going for hikes, and now I'm by the ocean. Well, I was by the ocean in LA too, but I digress. I spend more time at the ocean here on the Atlantic coast. And so I guess that just means I read more in the winter. So you will see that. So I'm gonna put up I probably should move over here a little bit. So here are the books that I read when I read them. So if you see the purple number, that means that I finished multiple books on that day. And that is actually something that I do quite often. One of my weird habits, and I know a lot of people are gonna hate this, but I read a lot of books at once. I don't know if it's the ADHD in me or what, but I do like to book jump. Depending on my mood, depending on what I'm feeling. So oftentimes I'll have like 5 to 10 books going at once, whether it's physical and Kindle, a mixture. And you know, if I want to read one book before bed, I'll read that. And then oftentimes what will happen is like on a Saturday or Sunday when I have more time, I will just finish those books, or at least the ones that get closer to the end. And once they hit like 50%, I'll usually just like dive right through it. So one of the things you will see is that I do often finish a number of books on the same day, and that is something, I think also because I did work for 6 months of 2020. And so working at 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, meant I had less time during the week. And then Saturday and Sunday were my prime reading days. So that also explains that. Probably also explains my absence for a little bit. So in January and February, I both read 7 books each month. And then in March, I actually moved out of Los Angeles, and it was quite a lofty move, you know, doing a solo move. I made a video about this, but I did a solo move cross country with my pets, had to coordinate everything. It was the beginning of the pandemic. It was kind of chaotic. So March, it should have been a month where I read a lot, at least like audiobooks or in hotel rooms, but I was just so stressed that my brain was not capable of reading books at that time. So that is why in March, I only read 2 books, which is crazy. I can't believe in March, I only read 2 books. And then in April was kind of a weird month. I spent a lot of time streaming on Twitch. It was the beginning of the pandemic. A lot of news was going on. And that month I felt like I was also really distracted. I only read 4 books. So in the first 4 months of the year, I only read 20 books, which is crazy that a third of the year was done and I only was a fifth of the way through my goal. I don't know how I was able to rally and pull together 100 books by the end of the year, but we got there. It just was a very, very slow start, which is a very good lesson, at least for me, in that even if you have a slow start, as long as you stick with it and you consistently try to do more and stick with like those little goals that I mentioned, then you can hit it. It's crazy. It was a very good lesson. Finally, in May, I started to pick up the slack again and read 7 books. So that was good, getting myself back into it with the 7 books. But then in June, I started a job and only read 2 books. I kept going up and down at the beginning of the year. The first 6 months were almost like a wash, which is kind of interesting considering that I did eventually hit the 100 books, but how little I read at the beginning of the first half of the year. So while I was working, I was training and trying to get up to speed at my new job as a security consultant very, very quickly. I was very dedicated to it, and so that's why I only read 2 books now. Thankfully, in July, I was finally up to speed and get back to the books. I read 8 books in July. Once again, getting back into the zone of it, second half of the year. And I feel like 8 books is a great number if you're trying to hit that 100 book goal. 2 books a week, you know, it sounds like a lot, but honestly, if you find books that you love and you really enjoy, those 2 books can go pretty quickly. And then in August is where I finally started to really pick up speed. Even though I was going outside a lot, I started playing golf, I started going paddle boarding out on the ocean, and I just wasn't really around very much, I felt like, but somehow I read 14 books. I think that also goes to show is that when you are less stressed and you have things going on, it's almost like your brain is more capable of reading and taking that time to just sit and read a book and not be distracted or just incapable of looking at a page, because I definitely experienced that at the beginning of the year. And then in September, I read 9 books, which was perfectly fine. October, I read 11 books, which was fantastic. So then we get to the end of the year, the very last 2 months, and I had 27 books to read, which sounds like a lot, but honestly, I did it. November, I read 16 books. December, I read 13 books. So I feel like I did definitely rally at the end there, but there was no period of time where I was like, oh, I can't believe I had to read books. Like, I enjoyed the fact that I had to set aside time to specifically read books. So kind of worked out for me. Now, let's get into the more juicy information. So another thing that I love to do is to look at the authors that I read most common. So I did read 4 from Martha Wells. Now granted, she has a wonderful series called the Murderbot Diaries, and so I read 4 of those books, and they were fantastic. If you're looking for a really enjoyable sci-fi read, I do highly recommend reading any of them. I'm caught up in the series. I think there are 5 total, and it's honestly just a fantastic series. Then I read 3 from Daniel Suarez. He is a tech sci-fi writer. He includes a lot of like technical details in his sci-fi, like IT and just computer stuff, and so I really enjoy them, even though they're a little bit I don't want to say like goofy, but over the top sometimes, but they're still fun. I enjoy them, and I'll probably read all of his books that he comes out with. Then I made an actual effort to read more old school sci-fi, so of course I had to go with the legend Isaac Asimov, and I read 3 of his books. The I, Robot series is fantastic. I read the original I, Robot and 2 from the Robot series, and my goodness, if you just want to read some old school cool sci-fi writing, I cannot recommend Isaac Asimov enough. It's just so enjoyable, and I love the stories, and even though they were written a heck of a long time ago, I feel like they do hold up, and they're just highly interesting. His whole perception of what robots would turn into and everything is just incredible, and very different than the movie. So yeah, that Will Smith movie was very, very different. Then I read 2 from Bret Easton Ellis. I read his American Psycho a long time ago, and so I figured I'd read more of his because I enjoyed the writing in American Psycho. So I read 2 of his books, and one I enjoyed, one I did not. Then I read 2 from Maya Angelou, 2 from Carlo Rovelli. If you're looking for books on physics, I highly recommend Carlo Rovelli. It just, there's poetry in his physics. Read 2 from Christopher Hitchens and 2 from Ian McEwan. As for age range, I usually read more young adult just to, I don't know, see what people are talking about in the young adult area. This year, out of 100, I only read 2, which is crazy. I read The Never-Ending Story and The Book Thief. When it comes to the fiction, not fiction breakdown, I do generally try to read 1 fiction, 1 nonfiction. However, I read 100 books and it was a rough year, and so I did lean a little bit more towards fiction just as like escapism. So this year I was a little skewed. I read 38 nonfiction and 62 fiction. As far as publication year, 22 were from 2020. I do try to pick books that are current. So I do try to pick books that are like new releases, whether people are buzzing about them or not. So that's why. And then I read 17 from 2019, and then the rest were all older books. As far as format goes, I do try, or at least I've learned to try to reduce my consumerism and only buy books that I've read and enjoyed and want to see on my shelves. So one of the things I've started doing over the past few years is that I have a library card that's fantastic, and I will often read a book from the library that gets automatically delivered to my Kindle. And you know, if I enjoy it, then I will buy it. I've kind of stopped the habit of buying books to read them unless it's an author that I have already read and enjoy, or if it's a book that I just already know I want to learn or read, not learn. So sometimes tech books or books in my favorite genres I will sometimes pick up, but oftentimes I do read them on the Kindle first. And so majority of my books read this year were actually on the Kindle. 52 Kindle, 41 physical. Those are books that I physically own, and 7 audiobooks. Not too many audiobooks this year just because I don't commute anymore, and I don't really have time to listen to audiobooks anymore. So I just had a few in there that I had already purchased with Audible and figured I'd get through. So of those 52 Kindle books, 48 of them came from the library. That's crazy. That means I saved so much money in just borrowing books from the library instead of reading them or buying the actual Kindle version. 4 of the books I did buy from Amazon on Kindle, but 48 of them free from the library. This next stat kind of shocked me because I do try to seek out more female authors, but this year I definitely missed the mark, and I read way more male authors than female authors. The only reason I could think is because I did read more sci-fi and tech, and they are often written by men, but a lot of the science and tech books that I read were actually by women. So I don't know, it's crazy, but I'm gonna try to do better next year to get more of an even mix of gender. And then finally, the genre breakdown. So my number 1 most read genre was sci-fi with 19. Now, granted, right behind that was graphic novels at also 19, and those are mostly sci-fi graphic novels with a few fantasy graphic novels in there, so that number could probably be boosted up if I didn't separate graphic novels, but there we are. Sci-fi number 1, graphic novels number 2. Number 3 at 13 was contemporary fiction, and number 4 was tech books at 11. Then I read 9 biographies or memoirs, and then I read 8 science books, then 4 horror, 4 also business, 3 fantasy, 2 books of essays, 2 philosophy, 1 historical fiction. I have to keep looking at my laptop to remember all of these. 1 literary fiction, 1 mystery, 1 humor, 1 true crime, and finally my 1 romance. I always try to read 1 romance every year just to remind myself how much I dislike that genre. It's just not for me. You know, if you love romance, that's perfectly fine. It doesn't work for me. And I often just can't handle it. However, the one that I read this year, One Day in December, I actually really enjoyed. So I guess I eat my words this year, but that was my 1 romance book. And that adds up to 100 books. One thing I also want to mention is that I actually have a ton of books that I DNF, did not finish, and that's just because I often do pick up books from the library, so I'm not paying for them, and I'll start reading them, and if by like 20% on my Kindle, I'm not really digging it, and I'm not really finding myself interested in reading it or excited to read it, then oftentimes I will pass it by and let it expire and won't finish it. So I have a ton of books that are like at 20% or 10% that I just didn't either, not necessarily even didn't like, but I just didn't feel compelled to keep reading. And there's so many books out there. I feel like you should never force yourself to read a book. If you were like slogging through a book, that's the worst feeling, and I never want to feel that. So one of like my biggest recommendations, I guess, if you do have a lofty goal or if you do want to read more, is just to find books that you really enjoy. The best feeling is when you have a book that you can't put down, that like there's nothing you want to do, you forget to eat, you forget to go to the bathroom, you just want to keep reading. Those are the books that will make you a reader and help you hit your goals or whatever, you know, that you just want to read more. And so I do highly suggest explore different genres, different authors, different categories, and find what you truly love. What do you stick with? What can't you put down? And find more like that, and you will become more the voracious reader like myself who is borderline obsessed. Maybe not this, you don't be this like this, but you know what I'm saying. I know this video is already very long, so I'm just gonna go through these very quickly. It's honestly so hard to go through them quickly though, because there's so much I could say about every single one of these books, but I'm gonna do my best. So I'm gonna go through all my books by genre, starting off with the ones that I read the most. So we'll start with sci-fi. Now with sci-fi, most of the books I read were on my Kindle, so I'm just gonna show them here. This Is How You Lose the Time War, The Bear by Andrew Krivak, The Hidden Girl and Other Stories by Ken Liu, Radicalized by Cory Doctorow, Influx by Daniel Suarez, Change Agent by Daniel Suarez, and also Damon by Daniel Suarez, War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, Machines Like Me by Ian McEwan, I, Robot by Isaac Asimov, and the first two in the Robot series also by Isaac Asimov, which are The Caves of Steel and The Naked Sun, The End of October by Lawrence Wright, The Testaments by Margaret Atwood, and then the last four in the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells, and The Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect by Roger Williams, which honestly could be a whole video in and of itself. Then jumping into my next most popular genre that I read for 2020, graphic novels, Preacher, volume number 2, Gantz, manga, not really graphic novels, but I lumped it in here with that. Then I read Lock and Key. This is volume 1. I also read volume 2 to prepare for the Netflix show, which ended up being horrible, so we won't talk about that. And I read the latest 3 in Monstrous, which is by far one of my favorite graphic novels. I highly recommend if you're looking for one. So I read 3, 4, and 5. Then I read 5 books from Dorohedoro, which is awesome because it is also written about a female, Kyu Hayashida. I honestly could have read more, but I was going through them too quickly and I didn't want that much padding in my goal of Dorohedoro books, but definitely for this year I'm gonna be reading a lot more. Then another good one is I did jump into The World of Berserk and read 6 of those volumes. That was another one that I actually had to make myself stop because I could have kept reading it and I didn't want that to just dominate my numbers. So once again, I'll be picking Berserk back up in 2021. Then for contemporary fiction, I actually only read 1 physical version, and this was The Chestnut Band by Soren Sveistrup from Danish land. Denmark. Then I read Dear Edward by Anne Napolitano, Less Than Zero by Bret Easton Ellis, Invisible Monsters by Chuck Palahniuk, The Comeback by Ella Berman, A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman, The Cement Garden by Ian McEwan, Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson, 9 Perfect Strangers by Leanne Moriarty, My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyankin Braithwaite, Blacktop Wasteland by S.A. Cosby, Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and Naked Lunch by William S. Burroughs. Oh goodness. All right, next up we have our tech books. So in tech, I read 11 tech books, and you can see that I do buy a lot of tech books because I like tech, and to me they're like historical documents of really fascinating things that have happened in the tech world. So I read Sandworm by Andy Greenberg, Cult of the Dead Cow by Joseph Men, No Rules Rules, Netflix and the Culture of Reinvention by Reed Hastings and Aaron Mayer, The Robots Are Coming by Andres Oppenheimer, Mind F by Christopher Wiley, Girl Decoded by Rana El Kaloubi, Weapons of Math Destruction by Kathy O'Neill, Click Here to Kill Everyone by Bruce Schneier, Super Pumped by Mike Isaac. Also read Tribe of Hackers by Marcus Carey, read the Blue Team version, and I read 9 biographies / memoirs. I kind of lumped them together. Maya Angelou, The Heart of a Woman, Sid Meier's memoir by Sid Meier, Uncanny Valley by Anna Wiener, and Einstein by Walter Isaacson. In Kindle, I read The Smallest Lights in the Universe by Sarah Seeger, A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson, Under the Tuscan Sun by Frances Mays, Untamed by Glennon Doyle, and A Year in Provence by Peter Mayle. Then I read 8 science books. Reality is Not What It Seems by Carlo Rovelli. The Order of Time, also by Carlo Rovelli. The End of Everything by Katie Mack. Why Fish Don't Exist by Lulu Miller. Universe from Nothing by Lawrence Krauss. A Life on Our Planet by David Attenborough. Cosmos by Carl Sagan. And Getting Started in Electronics by Forrest Mims. Then I read 4 horror. Stephen King, Pet Sematary. Lunar Park by Bret Easton Ellis. Mallory by Josh Mallerman, and Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. We're getting through them. Then I read 4 business books. Anything You Want by Derek Sivers. Range by David Epstein. Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And Don't Keep Your Day Job by Kathy Heller. 3 fantasy. The Neverending Story by Michael Ende, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and The Dresden Files #1, Stormfront by Jim Butcher. Then I read 2 books of compilations of essays, Nora Ephron, I Feel Bad About My Neck, and Maya Angelou, Even the Stars Look Lonesome. 2 books on philosophy, both of them by Christopher Hitchens, Mortality, and God Is Not Great. 1 historical fiction, The Book Thief. 1 literary fiction, No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy. 1 humor, Solutions and Other Problems by Ali Broche. 1 mystery, The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. 1 true crime, I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. And finally, to wrap it all up, 1 romance, One Day in December by Josie Silver. And that's it. Those are all the books that I read in 2020. It was quite a year. I probably could have read more, honestly, if I had started the year off with better numbers, but that's a interesting lesson, and I just had to be sure that next year I space them, or not next year, this year, 2021, I do a little bit better about spacing. So that brings me to 2021 goal and what that number is gonna be. I honestly wanted to drop it down to like 50. This year I am focusing on some more business aspects of my life. I'm kind of going back to being self-employed, so that does free up some time. But when you're self-employed, it's almost like you have less time, because all of your time you feel like should be going to you know, doing what you ultimately want and your business goals. And so when you're taking time to read, it almost feels like I'm not being as effective or responsible, or I don't know, there's a whole bunch of words that could fit into that category, and just guilt. That's what it comes down to. So we'll see how that goes, but my goal for 2021 is going to be 101 books. 1 more than last year. Maybe we'll just keep building it up. I'm really excited to share with you all. So if you are interested in finding more about any of the books I read, I have probably a little bit too much book stuff going on. I have a books Instagram if you want to follow me on Instagram. It's really just book pictures and my thoughts on books. I also started a Substack, which is like a newsletter for books. Every week I'm posting my 5 bookish things, which are like 5 things that I've taken away from books or about books, or just 5 things about books. And then also some more newsletter-ish things like my TBR for 2021, which is going to include all STEM and sci-fi books that I'm very excited about. So follow me over on Substack if you're interested in that kind of information. Those are weird things that I feel like don't really fit in videos. I don't really put them on my website. Nobody ever goes to my website. And they're too much, it's too much for Instagram. So that's why I created a Substack. It'll get delivered directly to your email if you do sign up. And so if you want to join that, please do so. Also, and like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm rebooting my books channel, Print Screens. So if you are interested, that name may change, I don't know. If you're interested in more book videos, which I am posting right after this, it's probably up already now, my favorite books of 2020, then go check that out. What else do I have? I don't know. On Twitch, I do talk about books, probably more so than most people would like, but there are definitely quite a few discussions about books on there. I try to keep them relevant, so relevant to Twitch folks, like science and tech mostly. And then also, if you are interested in joining the discussion, I do have a Discord channel. I will put that in the description box below, but feel free to join our Discord channel. A lot of good channels in there. We're always talking and hanging out, playing video games, and just having a really good time. It's a very wholesome community, so I love every single one of everybody in there, and it's just a lot of like it's a great community. And so if you're interested or want to join us over there, please do so. If you made it to the end of this video, I thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. I know this was a long video, but like I said, it's always my favorite thing to put together at the end of the year or the beginning of the year and to put out there. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a like. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. And if you want to follow me on any of the social medias, all of my links are down in the description box below, along with everything else I've already mentioned. I've also added my Goodreads in there. That was the last thing. How did I not mention Goodreads? I also added my Goodreads on there, so if you want to follow me on Goodreads to see what I'm reading, my ratings, and all of that, that's in there as well. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and let me know what your book goals are. Put them in the comments below. Let me know what you plan on reading and what your favorite genre is, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Goodbye.